I stood by the window, watching him cook on his terrace. His kitchen, usually closed off from the outside world, was open tonight, allowing me to see every movement he made. It was quiet except for the soft sizzle of the pan, the rhythmic chopping of vegetables, and the occasional clink of a utensil. I couldn't tear my eyes away from him, fascinated by the grace and ease with which he moved. His hands were confident, precise, as though he had been cooking like this for years. And in a way, I guess he had. Adam was a professional chef, a man of skill, someone whose talents I had heard whispers of, but never really had the courage to confront. I wasn't used to staring at people like this. I wasn't the type to spy or watch from windows. But tonight, something was different. There was a magnetic pull in his movements, an invisible thread that tugged at me. His kitchen became a stage, and he was the only actor, performing for an audience that didn't exist. But I was there. I was watching. He turned around and caught a glimpse of me. I froze, a heat rising to my cheeks as I quickly stepped back from the window. I wasn't sure if he saw me or if it was just my imagination, but the thought of him knowing I had been watching made my heart race. I felt embarrassed, foolish even. But there was also something exhilarating about it, this strange intimacy of watching him through the glass, something that felt wrong, yet so tempting at the same time. I had never really interacted with Adam. We had exchanged polite hellos in the hallway, but that was about it. I had heard about his work, his professional career, but that was as far as it went. He was always distant, always busy. Yet somehow, it felt like his presence had been filling the apartment building for months now. Every time I passed by his door, I could smell the food, rich, savory, mouth-watering aromas that seemed to seep into my very bones. There was one evening, a few weeks ago, when I had almost knocked on his door. I had convinced myself that it would be a simple, casual gesture, just a neighbor stopping by to ask for a taste of whatever he was cooking. But the moment I was about to turn the knob, I hesitated. What was I really asking for? A taste of food? Or something more? Something deeper, more personal, something that was beginning to make me uncomfortable in ways I didn't fully understand. So I never knocked. And yet, I kept coming back to that window, drawn to the way he moved, the way he seemed to lose himself in the act of cooking. There was a quiet passion to it, something I couldn't quite place. I wanted to know more. I wanted to be part of that world he had created in his kitchen. But how could I? What would I even say if I approached him? The days passed, and I found myself still thinking about it. I'd catch myself staring at my phone, wondering if I should send him a message. Maybe something simple. Just a casual note to say how much I admired his cooking. But no, that seemed too forward, too much. Instead, I let my thoughts fester in the silence of my apartment. I was alone with them, with the pull I felt every time I heard the faint sound of his kitchen coming to life. Tonight, as I stood there watching him once more, I realized something. It wasn't just the food. It wasn't just his talent in the kitchen. It was him. The way he moved, the way his presence seemed to fill the room without him even trying. It wasn't just his hands that were graceful, it was everything about him. The way his eyes focused on his task, the small frown of concentration as he perfected each dish. There was something so undeniably captivating about his demeanor. It was the quiet confidence of someone who knew their craft inside and out, someone who had mastered the art of cooking, but more than that, someone who exuded a kind of effortless authority that made it hard not to notice him. I had always considered myself a strong-willed person, someone who didn't easily get swept up in fleeting desires or fleeting attractions. But watching him, the way he moved, the way he seemed to command the kitchen like it was an extension of his own body, stirred something deep inside of me. I couldn't deny the tension building within me, a strange yearning to know more, to experience the world he had created for himself. His kitchen was not just a place where food was made, it was a stage for a performance, and I was an unwilling audience, drawn in by the allure of what he could create. I wondered if he knew how intoxicating his cooking was, how it had a way of drawing people in without them even realizing it. Maybe it wasn't just the food that was pulling me toward him. Maybe it was the idea of getting closer to him, seeing the man behind the culinary genius. As I watched him from the window, I couldn't help but imagine what it would be like to step into his world. To ask for a taste, not just of his food, but of his life. To sit at the table, watching as he prepared something just for me, explaining the ingredients, the methods, the little secrets he tucked away in each dish. I wondered if that was even a possibility. Could I ever be close enough to him to share such an intimate moment? Or was this just a fantasy I built up in my mind, a game I played to fill the void of my own quiet existence? It wasn't just about the food. It wasn't just about the man in the kitchen. It was about something deeper, something that had been quietly simmering inside of me since the moment I first laid eyes on him. It was the connection I felt, even if it was unspoken, even if it was just me watching him through the glass. There was something about the distance that made it all the more enticing, something about the barrier between us that made the idea of crossing it seem so tantalizing. I didn't know how long I stood there, my thoughts racing, my heart pounding in my chest. It felt like time had slowed down, like the world outside of that kitchen didn't matter anymore. All that mattered was the figure I watched moving so fluidly, so effortlessly, as though he were dancing with the ingredients he worked with. And then, as if in a trance, I saw him turn. His eyes flicked toward the window, and for a brief moment, they locked with mine. The breath caught in my throat, and my heart skipped a beat. I quickly looked away, hoping he hadn't seen me, hoping I hadn't been caught. But deep down, I knew I had been. There was no way he hadn't noticed. And yet, for a fleeting second, I wondered if maybe, just maybe, he hadn't minded. It was a foolish thought. One I quickly dismissed as I moved away from the window. But the tension that had built inside me didn't disappear. If anything, it intensified. The desire to know him, to taste what he was creating, to get closer to him, it was no longer something I could ignore. For the first time in a long while, I felt something shift inside me. It was the beginning of something I couldn't fully comprehend, something that felt both dangerous and exhilarating. And as I walked away from the window, I knew that somehow I was already in too deep. The following days felt strange. Every time I passed Adam's door or saw him in the hallway, I could feel that strange pull again. It wasn't something I could put into words, but it was there, lingering in the back of my mind like a quiet whisper, urging me to get closer. The thought of him consumed me, and though I tried to push it aside, it was impossible to ignore. Every time he cooked, I found myself drawn to that window, watching him as he prepared his dishes with such skill, such ease. And then, one evening, it happened. The door to his terrace was open wider than usual, and I saw him standing there, the light from the kitchen casting a soft glow around him. He was focused on the pan in front of him, his movements fluid and precise. I watched as he flipped a piece of fish, the delicate motion making my breath catch in my throat. There was something almost sensual about the way he moved. The way he handled the ingredients, the way he seemed to lose himself in the act of cooking, it all felt so intimate, like a secret shared between us, even though he had no idea I was watching. My body seemed to respond to him in a way I hadn't expected. I felt a warmth spreading through me, a quiet ache that deepened with every flick of his wrist, every quiet sound of the kitchen. I wanted to be closer. I wanted to be a part of this world he created. And for the first time, the thought of just standing at the window, silently observing, no longer felt enough. I took a deep breath, my heart pounding in my chest as I stepped away from the window. I knew what I had to do. This was my chance. I walked down the hall, my footsteps echoing in the quiet of the building. As I reached his door, I hesitated, unsure of how to begin. What was I even going to say? But before I could overthink it, I raised my hand and knocked softly, the sound of my knuckles against the wood feeling like it was shaking my entire body. I waited, my heart racing. And then, the door opened. There he was. Adam, standing in the doorway, looking as calm and collected as ever. But there was something in his eyes, a flicker of surprise, maybe even curiosity. For a moment, neither of us spoke. We just stood there, the space between us suddenly feeling charged, full of unspoken tension. "Hey," I said, my voice softer than I intended. I couldn't help but notice how amazing your food always smells. I was wondering if maybe I could try something sometime. Adam studied me for a moment, and then, to my surprise, a small smile tugged at the corner of his lips. He stepped aside, motioning for me to come in. You want to try my food? Sure. Come on in. I felt my pulse quicken as I crossed the threshold into his apartment. The air was thick with the smell of fresh herbs, garlic, and something rich and savory. It was intoxicating. I followed him into the kitchen, my eyes drawn to the counter, where a beautifully plated dish sat waiting. He was still in his apron, his sleeves rolled up to reveal the muscles in his arms, his movements still as confident and effortless as ever. I could feel the heat between us, even in the stillness of the kitchen. It was like everything around us faded, and there was only the two of us. "Take a seat," Adam said, his voice low. "I'll serve you." I nodded, feeling a wave of anticipation wash over me as I sat at the small table in the corner of the room. He moved around me, the soft rustling of his clothes and the clink of dishes only adding to the tension building between us. Finally, he placed the dish in front of me, his hand lingering just a little too long on the edge of the plate. "Go ahead," he said, his eyes meeting mine with an intensity that made my breath catch in my throat. "Try it." I picked up the fork, my fingers brushing against his hand as I took a bite. The taste was incredible, rich, complex, and perfectly balanced. But it wasn't just the food that left me speechless. It was the way he was looking at me, the way his eyes seemed to be searching for something in mine. For a moment, I forgot about the food. I forgot about everything except the heat between us, the way our bodies seemed to gravitate toward each other, as if some invisible force was pulling us closer. Without thinking, I set the fork down, my hand reaching out for his. He didn't pull away. Instead, his fingers curled around mine, the warmth of his touch sending a shock of electricity through me. "Is it good?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "It's amazing," I replied, my voice shaky as I looked up at him. "But I think I want something more." His gaze darkened, and before I could say another word, he was leaning toward me, his lips brushing against my ear. The warmth of his breath sent a shiver down my spine, and I felt my body respond to him in a way I couldn't deny. He pulled back slightly, his eyes locked onto mine, and in that moment, I knew there was no turning back. "Are you sure?" he asked, his voice soft, almost teasing. I nodded, my breath shallow as I reached up, my hand finding its way to the back of his neck, pulling him closer. He didn't hesitate. His lips found mine in an urgent kiss, and all at once, the tension that had been building between us for so long snapped. In that moment, everything else faded away. There was no longer a barrier between us, no longer the distance that had separated us for so long. It was just the two of us, finally giving in to the unspoken desire that had been simmering for so long. The kiss deepened, and everything became more urgent. My hands moved to his chest, feeling the heat of his skin through the fabric of his shirt, and I could sense his heart racing just as fast as mine. His hands roamed to my waist, pulling me closer until there was no space left between us. It wasn't just about the food anymore. It wasn't about the cooking or the kitchen. It was about us. About the quiet longing we had both denied for so long. And now, as we stood there, our bodies pressed together, the world outside didn't matter. We were finally where we were meant to be together.